When a woman's partner is away on a business trip, she begins hearing strange noises coming from the attic of their quiet neighborhood home. Brushing off the sounds as the house settling, she tries to ignore them. However, as the noises persist and escalate, she finds herself facing the chilling realization that someone may be living in her attic, watching her every move. You know, I've always been a bit of a night owl. My partner, Daniel, was on a business trip, and I had the whole house to myself. I wasn't too worried about being alone. Our neighborhood is usually pretty quiet, and I figured I'd enjoy the peace. It started on a Wednesday night when I heard some odd noises coming from the attic. At first, I brushed it off as just the house settling. Old houses creak and groan all the time. But the next night, I heard it again. A sort of scraping sound, like someone moving things around. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make me sit up and listen. I told myself it was just my imagination, maybe some rodents or something, and went back to watching TV. I didn't want to freak myself out over nothing. By Friday, the noises were more frequent. I could hear soft thumps and occasional creaks that didn't sound like the usual house noises. I mentioned it to my friend Sarah when we were chatting on the phone, and she laughed, suggesting maybe I had a ghost. We joked about it, but deep down, I felt a little uneasy. Saturday night, things got really weird. I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I heard what sounded like footsteps above me. I froze, listening hard, and there it was again, a deliberate, slow step. My heart started racing. I tried to rationalize it, maybe a stray animal or something, but the sound was too distinct. It sounded like a person. I decided to be brave and check it out. I grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat from the closet. The attic access was in the hallway, and as I stood there staring at the pull-down ladder, I felt a chill run down my spine. I took a deep breath, pulled the ladder down, and climbed up slowly, flashlight in hand. The attic was dark and musty, filled with old boxes and furniture we hadn't used in years. I swept the flashlight around, looking for anything unusual. Nothing seemed out of place, but the air felt heavy, like I wasn't alone. I quickly climbed back down and shut the ladder, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I called Daniel and told him what had been going on. He was concerned, but tried to reassure me, saying it was probably just my imagination. He promised to come home early if things got worse. I felt a bit better after talking to him, but I couldn't shake the unease. That night, I heard the footsteps again, but this time they were louder. I stayed in bed, too scared to move. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it a burglar? Someone squatting in the attic? I barely slept, and when morning came, I felt exhausted and on edge. On Monday, I decided to call a pest control company, thinking maybe there were animals in the attic. The guy came over, did a thorough inspection, and found no signs of animals. He suggested it might be the old wood expanding and contracting with the temperature changes. It made sense, but I still felt uneasy. Tuesday night was the worst. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of something, or someone moving around in the attic. It was unmistakable this time. I felt a surge of panic. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking. The operator stayed on the line with me until the police arrived. They searched the attic thoroughly, and what they found was horrifying. There was a makeshift sleeping area, an old sleeping bag, empty food wrappers, and even some of my personal items. Someone had been living up there, sneaking down at night to steal food and who knows what else. The police didn't find anyone in the attic, but they said it looked like the person had left in a hurry. They assured me they'd patrol the area and keep an eye out for any suspicious activity. I called Daniel, and he cut his trip short to come home. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel safe in my own home. Knowing that someone had been watching me while I slept, moving around the house while I was oblivious, was beyond terrifying. Even with Daniel back, I found it hard to relax. The police never caught the person, and to this day, I can't shake the feeling of being watched. I've become hyper-aware of every little noise, every creak and groan of the house. It's a constant reminder that our sense of security can be shattered so easily, and sometimes the things that go bump in the night are all too real. Welcome to Dread Tales. Here, you'll discover real and exclusive scary stories sent in by people just like you. Each tale is crafted to give you chills and keep you on the edge of your seat. If you enjoy spine-tingling, believable horror, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to share it on your thoughts and comment with your own scary experiences. Who knows? Your story might be featured next. After losing her house key, a woman hires a locksmith to replace the locks, only to discover he has made a copy of her key and has been secretly entering her home at night to watch her sleep. The chilling realization shatters her sense of security, leading to his arrest and a lifelong lesson in vigilance. I remember that evening like it was yesterday. I had just returned from a long day at work, exhausted and ready to unwind. But as I reached into my purse for my keys, panic set in. My house key was missing. I must have dropped it somewhere along the way. After a few minutes of frantic searching, I gave up and called a locksmith. To my relief, he arrived promptly. He was a middle-aged man with a friendly demeanor, and he quickly got to work replacing the lock. I felt a sense of security once again as he handed me the new keys and left. For the next few days, everything seemed normal. I went about my usual routine, feeling a bit more cautious but otherwise fine. Then I started noticing little things. At first, it was subtle, a drawer slightly open, a book not where I had left it. I brushed it off, thinking I was just being paranoid. But then, one evening, I came home to find my living room light on. I was sure I had turned it off before leaving for work. My heart pounded as I walked through the house, checking each room. Nothing seemed out of place, but the feeling of unease was growing. I decided to set up a camera in my living room, just to be sure. I bought one of those small, discreet cameras and positioned it in a corner, facing the entrance. The first few nights, I didn't catch anything unusual, but on the third night, I saw him. There he was, the locksmith, entering my house in the dead of night. He moved quietly, almost methodically, checking each room before finally standing over my bed, watching me sleep. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as I watched the footage. He stood there for what felt like an eternity before quietly leaving the way he came. I couldn't believe it. How did he still have a key? Then it hit me. He must have made a copy before handing me the new set. My sense of security shattered, replaced by fear and anger. I called the police immediately. They took my statement and reviewed the footage. The locksmith was arrested the next day. It turned out he had a history of similar offenses, breaking into homes and watching the occupants, sometimes planning something more sinister. I shudder to think what could have happened if I hadn't caught him in time. From that day on, I made sure to double-check my locks and security measures. Trust is a fragile thing, and I learned the hard way to be more cautious. I've since moved to a new place, and every time I lock the door, I remind myself of that terrifying experience. It's scary how someone you trust to make you feel safe can end up being the one to shatter that safety. Now, I always keep my keys in a secure place, and I never let my guard down. It's a hard lesson, but one I'll never forget. A routine babysitting job turns into a night of terror for a young babysitter when eerie phone calls and strange noises reveal an escaped convict hiding in the house. Her quick thinking saves the children, but the chilling experience leaves her forever haunted. So let me tell you about this one time I was babysitting for the Johnsons. It was just a regular gig, you know? They live in this cozy little suburban neighborhood where nothing much happens. At least that's what I thought before that night. So, it started off like any other babysitting job. The kids were tucked into bed, and I was just chilling downstairs, watching some TV and munching on snacks. Then, out of nowhere, my phone starts buzzing with calls. At first, I thought it was just the parents checking in or something, but when I picked up, there was this weird, raspy voice on the other end. It was like something straight out of a horror movie. The voice was all whispery and menacing, saying stuff like, "I'm watching you," and "You can't hide." I tried to brush it off as some dumb prank, but deep down, it freaked me out. I decided to call the Johnsons to let them know what was up, but they were like, "Oh, it's probably just the kids messing around. Don't worry about it." But the calls kept coming, getting creepier by the minute. And then, I started hearing these weird noises coming from upstairs, like someone shuffling around. I was freaking out at this point, but I had to check it out. So I mustered up all the courage I had and tiptoed upstairs, heart pounding in my chest. And that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure lurking in the hallway. I froze, my mind racing a mile a minute. Who the hell was this person? And what were they doing in the house? I wanted to scream, to run, but I knew I had to stay calm for the kids' sake. I slowly backed away, trying to make as little noise as possible, and that's when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of someone breathing, heavy and ragged. My stomach dropped as I realized what was going on. This wasn't some prankster messing around. This was serious. I bolted back downstairs, grabbed the kids, and hightailed it out of there as fast as I could. I called the cops as soon as we were safely outside, and they showed up in record time. They searched the house from top to bottom and found the guy hiding in a closet, bleeding and furious. Turns out, he was an escaped convict who had broken into the house earlier that day, planning to use it as a hideout. And those calls? Yeah, they were coming from inside the house, all right. From him, taunting me the whole time. The Johnsons were beside themselves when they got home, thanking me over and over again for keeping their kids safe. But honestly, it didn't feel like much of a victory. That night changed something inside me. I've never felt truly safe while babysitting since then, and every time I hear a phone ring, I can't help but remember that chilling voice whispering, "I'm watching you."